Welcome to J-Force English. I'm Jennifer, and today you're going to learn English with the news. We're going to read an article together, and this article is from USA Today, and it talks about the upcoming presidential election. Let's get started.
I'll read the headline, Biden versus Trump. Big challenges, but opposite ones as 2024 rematch begins. First, let's talk about this. Notice how I pronounced it as versus. This is called an abbreviation. It's when we take a word and we shorten it. And almost always we write versus as VS. Versus. Notice though, it does have this period, which is important to include. If you don't include it, everyone will know what you mean, but technically it should be written with the period. So VS period, and that means versus. Of course, that's when one person or team, more commonly a sports team, is competing against another. So if there's a football or tennis match on TV, you could say it's the US versus England, for example, and then they would write it as VS period. So Biden versus Trump, because they're competing, and they're competing for, of course, the position of president, a very big competition. Big challenges, but opposite ones. Of course, opposite is hot, cold. Those are opposites. Opposite ones as 2024 rematch begins. Notice here the re in front of match, and notice my pronunciation, E, the long E sound, rematch. So it means they're competing again because they already competed against each other. This is commonly used in sports. Again, for example, we lost. So let's say, what was my team? The US versus England. So let's say the US lost, England won. We lost, but don't worry, we'll win the rematch next month. So that means next month, the US is playing England again. That would be the rematch when they compete again. Let's continue. Joe Biden and Donald Trump each face significant challenges. So notice you face a challenge. You can face a situation as well, a difficult situation that would be a challenging situation. You face challenges in a potential rematch for the White House in 2024. So this is when the election takes place, 2024. A new USA Today. USA Today is the name of the news company that published this article. I'm not sure if they're popular where you live. A new USA Today poll. So a poll is when you ask someone about their preferences. So I could say, I'm calling to see where you want to go on your next vacation. Would you choose the US, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand? Those are the four choices in the poll, and then you would choose Canada, and that is your answer. So, and that would be the poll results, which share the answers that all the respondents are the people who are answering the poll, who are responding to the poll. So let me write that down. Respondents. People who answer a survey or a poll, and it comes from the verb to respond, which is another way of saying answer. So that's why the individuals are referred to as respondents. So this is a noun. So in the poll, you could say we had 500 respondents, 500 people who responded to the poll, who answered the poll. So a new USA Today poll finds, but opposite ones. So each candidate has challenges, but their challenges are opposite. We don't know what those challenges are yet. Hopefully we'll find out in this article.
If you like this lesson, then I know you'll love the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers on YouTube, TVs, movies, and the news to help you understand fast English and add the most common phrasal verbs, idioms, and expressions to your speech. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for a link to join the Finally Fluent Academy today.
For President Biden, his standing among the voters who backed him in 2020 is wide but shallow. Okay, first let's talk about this verb here, who backed him. I'll also point out that everything that we're reviewing, I summarize in a lesson PDF. So you can look in the description below for the link to download the lesson PDF so you don't have to worry about taking notes. For President Biden, his standing among the voters who backed him. This is another way of saying who supported him. Who supported him. Supported him. So as a question, who did you back? I backed Trump. Or I backed Biden. And then you could share. You could, if somebody asks you, who did you back? You could respond back and say, I supported Biden, because it has the exact same meaning. So you can absolutely change it. But generally, we use the same language as the question. So if the question used back, I would most likely respond back and with back. Voters who backed him, supported him in 2020 is wide but shallow. Okay, what does this mean? Wide but shallow. It's always easier to explain with a picture. So in this picture, it's showing wide. Width goes this way. Width, wide. And then shallow is talking about the depth. So shallow is not very deep. So if you're digging a hole, a shallow hole would only be about this. But then a deep hole would be like this. So wide but shallow. And notice deep and narrow, because they're going to say this in the article in just a minute. So pay attention to this. Deep, I already explained when you're digging a hole, deep, but then narrow is not wide, okay? So wide, narrow, shallow, deep. Those are some measurements for you. Now, what does this mean in terms of support? Describing it as wide but shallow. So if a wide number of people support Biden, it's saying that he has many supporters, but the support is not very strong. So it's like, I support him, but I'm not that committed to him. My support is not very deep. My support is shallow. There's only this much support compared to this much support. So keep that in mind. That's for President Biden, according to this article and this poll. Now, his support is wide but shallow, at risk of being eroded. Eroded means it's going to disappear. His support will disappear, so no longer be there. That's what it means of at risk of being eroded. So his support will disappear. Let me just write this for you here. I lost my controls. At risk of, I have to write at risk of disappearing. Do you know why? Because if I use of is a preposition, and then your verb following a preposition has to be in ing form. So I can say at risk of being eroded or at risk of disappearing by a credible Democratic challenger. So if another challenger, so somebody who challenges Biden, that would be a challenger. If a credible Democratic challenger appears, he could erode, so cause Biden's support to disappear. for the nomination or a third-party candidate in the fall. Notice my pronunciation here because we have the word date, and that's how you would pronounce it, date. What is the date today? What is the date today? Hey Siri, what's the date today? And you pronounce it 8. But here I'm pronouncing it candidate, it. So it's that schwa sound, candidate. A candidate is a person who is competing in a competition, generally an election. So Trump is a candidate and Biden is a candidate. And of course, there are other candidates as well. For former President Trump, support among his 2020 voters is deep but narrow. You already know what that means. Here's the picture to remind you. So deep, remember, deep, you can see in the picture. So it means the people who support Trump really support him. The amount of support for Trump is deep, but it's narrow, which means that not as many people support him, but the people who do support him, they really support him. Deep but narrow, wide but shallow. So that's why in the headline it says they're opposites, because their support, the way that people support them or back them is quite different. They're opposites. Okay, so deep but narrow. Reinforced by controversies. Notice the pronunciation here, controversies, that are all but guaranteed to make it harder for him to expand his support, because remember, his support is narrow. So if he wants to expand his support, it means it would become wider. Expand his support in the general election. I like this expression here, all but guaranteed. When you describe something as all but guaranteed, it is actually saying almost guaranteed, 95% certain. If guaranteed is 100% certain, then it would probably be 95, 96, 97, maybe even 98 or 99% certain. So you might say, rain this weekend is all but guaranteed. It's just another way of saying it most likely will rain this weekend. All but guaranteed. Having this but here is a little confusing because maybe it makes it sound like it isn't guaranteed, but it's actually saying it's almost guaranteed. So again, this is, I would say, 95 to 99% certain. All but guaranteed. So the controversies are all but guaranteed to make it harder for him to expand his support, make it wider in the general election. The poll of 600 Biden voters, remember, those are the respondents. So we could say there were 600 respondents, 600 Biden voters and 600 Trump voters. So again, 600 respondents taken by landline and cell phone April 15th to 18th underscores the uncertainties. I like this verb here, underscore, to underscore, because it comes from computer technology. Because right now, I am underscoring the word underscore. Right now, I'm underscoring the word general election. So if I do this and all you see is this part of the screen, your eye is naturally going to go to general election. It could obviously go to the highlighted parts. So let me get rid of the highlighted parts. Right now, where is your eye going to go? To the word uncertainties, because it's underscored. So when we underscore something, we emphasize it. You emphasize it. And you emphasize it because it's important for some for some reason. As an example, I could say the recent storm underscored the need to have bottled water at home. Why would a storm emphasize this? Emphasize the importance of bottled water? Well, because maybe in the storm, the power went out and the grocery stores were closed and you needed access to water, but you couldn't get it. So if you have bottled water at home and other food, other supplies as well. The recent storm underscored the need to have, it showed the importance of it. So I really like that verb. That's a good one. Let's continue. A muscular 93% of the voters who supported Trump in 2020 approve of the job he did as president. Notice the adjective here, muscular. Generally, when we see muscular, we think of people who have big muscles. I am not very muscular. I have tiny little muscles. But if you are muscular, you're probably quite powerful. And that's what the adjective means in this case, a powerful 93% of the voters. And it's powerful because that's a very high number. 93%, that is impressive. So I'll write here, powerful as an adjective. And this is why earlier they said his support is deep. The people who support him really, really like him. His support is deep. 93% of the voters who supported Trump in 2020, who backed Trump, approve of the job he did as president. Just 5% disapprove. That is impressive. It shows that his support is deep. What's more, 45% say they are more excited about voting for him in 2024 than they were last time. A double-digit edge over the 33% who are less excited. So again, they're showing the support is very deep. So here, double digit, well, one digit is from 0 to 9. That would be a single digit. As an example, I could say the temperature is going to be in the single digits tonight, which would mean it's going to be between 0 to 9 degrees Celsius tonight. Now, if I say it's going to be in the double digits this weekend, for example, well, what would be 2 digits? That would be 10 degrees. Well, 40 degrees is also in double digits. 50 degrees is in double digits, but hopefully nowhere is going to be 50 degrees Celsius. In Canada, it generally goes up to 30 is about our maximum. So I'm just going to write 30. This would be a double digit because 1 digit, 2 digit, there are 2 digits. Okay, so the double digit edge, because edge in this case means increase, because 33% are less excited, but 45% are more excited. So the difference between these two numbers is 12, and that's double digits. So that's what this double digit edge means. It's just the difference between this number and this number. Okay, let's continue on. Some candidates you can kind of be lukewarm about. If you're lukewarm, it means not very warm, but not very cold. So if I described my interest in something as lukewarm, it means I'm kind of interested, but not overly interested. So that's what I'll write here. Somewhat interested, but not overly interested. But with Trump, is hot or cold. So it's saying if it's hot, you love him, but if it's cold, you hate him. So it's hot or cold. Most people are not lukewarm. They have a very strong opinion. Said Ron Buffum, 77, a health insurance agent from Round Rock, Texas. So he was one of the respondents, the people who answered the poll. A Republican and a Trump voter, he was among those called in the poll. He was one of the respondents. For Biden, 85% of his 2020 voters approve of the job he's doing as president, and 10% disapprove. So his support isn't as deep as Trump. It's shallow, or shallower at least. A healthy rating, but not quite the full embrace Trump has. More troubling for the current president, 43% of his voters report being less excited about supporting him next time. That's almost half the voters. Close to double the 24% who are more excited. So more people are less excited. But remember, he has wider support, which means overall more people support him, but they don't support him as much. But Trump has very deep support, but it's narrow, which means not as many people support him. Just go back to that visual. And that's the end of our article. So now what I'll do, I'll go to the top and I'll read the article in full. And this time you can focus on my pronunciation. Biden versus Trump. Big challenges, but opposite ones, as 2024 rematch begins. Joe Biden and Donald Trump each face significant challenges in a potential rematch for the White House in 2024. A new USA Today poll finds, but opposite ones. For President Biden, his standing among the voters who backed him in 2020 is wide but shallow, at risk of being eroded by a credible Democratic challenger for the nomination or a third-party candidate in the fall. For former President Trump, support among his 2020 voters is deep but narrow, reinforced by controversies that are all but guaranteed to make it harder for him to expand his support in the general election. The poll of 600 Biden voters and 600 Trump voters taken by landline and cell phone April 15th to 18th underscores the uncertainties. A muscular 93% of the voters who supported Trump in 2020 approve of the job he did as president. Just 5% disapprove. What's more, 45% say they are more excited about voting for him in 2024 than they were last time, a double-digit edge over the 33% who are less excited. Some candidates you can kind of be lukewarm about, but with Trump, it's hot or cold, said Ron Buffum, 77, a health insurance agent from Round Rock, Texas. A Republican and a Trump voter, he was among those called in the poll. For Biden, 85% of his 2020 voters approve of the job he's doing as president, and 10% disapprove. A healthy rating, but not quite the full embrace Trump has. More troubling for the current president, 43% of his voters report being less excited about supporting him next time, close to double the 24% who are more excited.
We'll be reviewing many more news articles related to the presidential election, so make sure you subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can download it from my website right here, and when you're ready, get started with your next lesson.